It is day 2 of this 3-day summit, and today it's been all about boosting lagging productivity, or as the government calls it, how to achieve that holy grail of lifting living standards.
Coming up, we're going to look at the ideas being put on the table today and hear from some of those who've been in the room. This morning's session has been focused on cutting red tape, speeding up approvals for infrastructure projects, for housing as well. Here's how the day has unfolded so far.
The federal government's 3-day economic reform roundtable is the talk of Parliament House this week.
The government is pushing for solutions to Australia's biggest commercial challenges.
Leverage moving up in the world. We saw some really welcome signs of developing consensus around a number of really important areas. Not always reflected in the coverage of yesterday, but don't be deterred by that.
The timeline for action depends on the scale of change.
Productivity really sits at the core of so much of what we're trying to achieve. And we don't see that as making people work longer for less. We're thinking about productivity through a much broader lens. The energy transformation, the technological opportunity, and particularly AI, the care economy, competition and dynamism, human capital.
Housing's going to be number one on the roundtable's agenda for today.
We're talking about regulation and approvals, better regulation, making sure regulation is serving a useful purpose, making sure approvals can be quicker.
We've got an ambitious housing target as we do, 1.2 million new homes over the course of 5 years. We're not on track to deliver that.
I'm here with the builders. The Treasurer is behind closed doors in Canberra with his binders.
I talked to a builder the other day who said to me, Claire, back in the day, the hard part was building the home. Now it's getting the approvals.
Governments need to be judged by outcomes. The outcomes are failing. Treasury itself has indicated they're not going to build 1.2 million homes.
In the care economy, we recognise that productivity is not the only thing that we care about.
I want the NDIS to be there for the next generation, but the spending is getting out of control. The government has talked about this, but they're not walking the talk.
What all of this is about creating more opportunities for more people in every part of our country, lifting living standards by making our economy more productive. That is the holy grail for us. So with that, I'll thank the media and excuse them.
Jim Chalmers there. Well, as you saw, Mark Butler was addressing the press club today. He is the new minister for the NDIS in this new term of government, and he was really outlining his vision for this massive, very important scheme, revealing some big changes, including a new Thriving Kids program for children with mild to moderate developmental delays. This is all aimed at moving some people off the NDIS. But perhaps most significantly, he has revealed he wants to lower spending growth even further. So, Speers, we know that at the moment there's a legislated or a target to reduce growth to 8%, and he is saying today he wants to lower that to around 5 to 6%, which would be in line with the spending growth that we're seeing in aged care and also in Medicare. This is a very significant announcement, really, for a Labor minister to make.
Look, it is a big announcement, and the timing of this, of course, is quite telling as well. This roundtable's going on about a few things, getting more productivity, economic growth, but fixing the budget as well. And so Mark Butler, on day 2 of this summit, is at the press club announcing what is a measure to try and help fix the budget. The NDIS growth, we know, we heard Mark Butler just there, and plenty of ministers point out it's growing, at a rate that's too high. They've been trying to get it down to a growth rate of 8% from where it's been. They're confident they'll get there by next year. Not easy. But then after that, he's talking about getting that down to 5 to 6%. We don't know exactly, the dollars around what that might save, but that's the significance. And then how they intend to do this is really going back to this idea where he acknowledged there's been drift, getting foundational supports up and running for people with mild to moderate developmental delays and autism. Instead of going on the NDIS, onto foundational supports, and in particular, Jane, Thriving Kids for those under the age of 9, where the states and the territories, funded also by the Commonwealth, will need to provide a lot more help for those kids so that they're not ending up on the NDIS.
Yeah, and we heard Mark Butler there basically making the case for this, that he wants to return the NDIS to its original purpose, which was to support people with significant and permanent disabilities, and also obviously to ensure that it's sustainable budget-wise. But what he is saying has happened, and I think that this would be backed up by many in the sector, since the NDIS its creation, we've seen states basically vacate the space. That funding supports for support services, Mark Butler's saying there, that existed pre-NDIS, funded by the states, no longer exist. And so he is basically saying today there's this Thriving Kids program to sit within foundational supports, but there will be an awful lot of pressure from the Commonwealth for the states to actually step up and get a deal, because it's been in negotiations for 2 years and we are seemingly no closer to an outcome.
It's about those supports in childcare and school settings that have disappeared and now need to be stepped up. I mean, he talked to the Minister there about the families looking for those mainstream services, can't find them. We spoke on this program yesterday to the New South Wales Treasurer. He was sounding optimistic and confident about still getting there with these things. But I think this puts a lot more pressure on both the Commonwealth and the states to get cracking, reach agreement around this, put those mainstream Thriving Kids, foundational support services they're talking about in place, so that pressure can come off the NDIS.
And I think it's probably worth saying at this point that if you're going to be lowering spending growth, that is a national cabinet decision. So there's a way to go, and there's also already some nerves from the disability sector about what this means. So we're just bringing you the very, light overview of what's happening, but much more analysis to be had.
So let's get back to what's happening inside the cabinet room at the Economic Roundtable. The Shadow Treasurer Ted O'Brien is, of course, there. He has a seat at the table. We spoke to him before we heard from Mark Butler there at the National Press Club. Here's what he told us.
Ted O'Brien, welcome.
Great to be here.
Well, we're now at the halfway point of this Economic Reform Roundtable. You've been in the room for the past 1.5 days. Are there any good ideas that you've heard being canvassed?
Well, we're at the halfway point, but it did take the government 3 years to realise there's an issue with living standards, and then it took them 3 months to organise a 3-day discussion. And we're halfway through that. Look, I would say I'm seeing the outcomes here sort of almost in 2 or 3 parts. There's been a lot of discussion around the need to have fewer and better regulations. And I think at a high level, everybody's saying, yeah, we definitely do need to. We're way too regulated in this country. The last term of government saw, around about 5,000 additional regulations, and that needs to be dealt with. And so lots of ideas, which I won't run through in detail now, came from all different directions as to what types of regulations, who could look at solving it, relationships with the states, all these sort of things. Now, my view on that is, yes, there needs to be fewer and better regulations, but there needs to be specific time-bound targets on the government to deliver. That's going to be the key, I believe. That's my instinct.
Are you getting the sense that is what's going to come out of this summit, that there will be kind of a plan to go forward with a plan?
I don't know, but I've made my view very clear. That's what I think the government should be doing. So it's not just this high-level thing like, oh, yeah, we're going to look at regulation, because we know nothing will really happen. If you really want to move the dial, they need to be very specific, and they need to set targets, and those targets need to be time-bound.
It's easy to say in the general, isn't it? Let's reduce red tape. It's much harder, as you say, in the specifics to do it. Isn't that what this process is about? Are you hearing in the room specific ideas of where regulation can be reduced?
We are.
So is it a worthwhile process?
Well, David, to be honest, if that's all we're here for, not really. I mean, you don't have a 3-day with all the hoo-ha around this summit if it's just talking regulation. I mean, that is
so this is
important.
Not been a worthwhile process.
The regulation part is very important, but it's sort of business as usual, really, for a government, right? Now, the second part I'll probably mention, which was a lot of the discussion today, was housing. And I think we all know the problem that the government's had with trying to deliver on its 1.2 million houses. It's just not happening. And I think they recognise that. Where there's agreement in the room, it's the key challenge being supply, supply, supply. So that's good. In terms of the key issues that came up in housing, there was probably the most concrete one was freezing the construction code, given that's a coalition policy at the last election. Without getting ahead of my colleagues, on an in-principle level, that sounds good. Let's wait to see what the detail is from the government. The second area really was reform of the EPBCA, so
yes.
environmental law.
Where are you at on that? I was going to ask you this because government tried in the last term, it's trying again. It wants to have an EPA, an Environment Protection Authority. You guys resisted that in the last term. Are you now open to the idea of an EPA?
Well, I'm less inclined to commit, David, today as to where we stand on the EPA, because it depends on what Labor brings forward. What I can say, though, is we are absolutely willing to be as constructive as we can. And so if we can work together, let's work together.
So there is some openness now.
There's certainly openness to be dealing with trying to fix the environmental laws. There's no doubt about
including
that.
Including an EPA.
Again, we're not saying, here's a red line at all. So we'll be open, constructive where we can, critical where we must on housing. I think that the third area that keeps coming up is energy. And here I do have a concern. And I believe that and this is principally the fault of the government, that they are defining the wrong problem to solve. So all the discussion is, the problem to solve is we need to achieve this 82% renewables on the grid. It's all about how do we accelerate the rollout of the existing energy plan. And I have a problem with that because this is meant to be a productivity summit and everything was meant to be on the table. If you accelerate a policy delivery which is already failing, and we know energy costs just keep going up, gas over 30%, electricity over 30%, even the market operator is saying costs will only go up. The discussion at the table should in fact be trying to answer a different question, which is what is the cheapest electricity grid that we can deliver to households and to families?
Well, it's more generation, isn't it? That's what we need, more generation.
Well, more generation ultimately, because demand's going to go up and AI and data centres and so forth, but that's not the key. The key objective is we must get prices down. And of course you've got reliability and you've got the decarbonisation agenda. But that's a real issue here, because if we're talking about, trying to get more capital from superannuation funds, we're talking about skewing skills and development, we are talking about skewing approvals, all to accelerate the delivery of an energy plan which is making Australia more expensive to do business in. That doesn't solve for living standards. It makes it worse, not better.
Made this clear around the table?
Yes, I have, a couple of times, Jane.
And has this been the main contribution you've made around the energy transition and the need to change the course we're on?
I've made a few contributions. I think everything I've said to you, I've said in the room. I like to be consistent with what you say in the room is what you say outside of the room. So everything I've said to you is what I've said also in the room. And
can I just quickly go back to the issue, and notwithstanding energy being a huge issue and will be a defining issue, I think, of at least the next decade, but just back on the EPA, we know that mining groups have shifted slightly, that they're comfortable with the idea now of an EPA, provided that the minister has the final say or call-in powers or can override whatever the EPA says. Is that a principle that you would be in support of? Oh, look, Jane, to be honest, I probably won't lay out the principles now. We'll go through our usual process for doing so. I think what I have seen, whether it be mining projects, whether it be gas projects, and some of the renewables projects, is that the approval process gets so tied up, especially on gas, for example. They don't know where the stakeholder list finishes. The process is, again, not time-bound, and so that leads to uncertainty. And uncertainty basically makes your project more expensive. So if you're going to make a decision as a business to close the deal, final investment decision, then you look at your spreadsheet and all the little numbers in the cells, well, they change the longer the process goes for. And so what business is after is certainty, and certainty is something that these guys haven't been delivering. They didn't deliver it last term, which is why sovereign risk has gone up, the costs of projects have gone up. And can I ask you about a road user charge? Of course, Paul Fletcher, when you guys were in government, tried, the Nats blew up and you pulled back on it. Now, David. Well, that's what happened. Am I wrong? Now, David, I'm not talking about our internals. Yeah. But now it's back on the table. I'm told in the room today, Matt Common, the CBA boss, said this is uncontroversial. Ken Henry said it's a fantastic idea. Are you now on board? Well, we actually haven't gone through how we're going to deal with different charges and taxes in detail. The principle of a road user charge? We haven't done that in detail. There's no doubt people say a lot of things around the table, but my general view, my instinctive view, is we believe in lower, simpler, fairer taxes. When it comes to charges, the fairer part of that belief system kicks in. Everybody who drives on the roads, well, they should be responsible for contributing to the upkeep, including the electric of those roads, including people who drive EVs. So as a basic principle, you use the roads, well, you should make a contribution. I think like there's some room to negotiate there. Tony Bryan, unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we've got to let you go. But thank you, Jane. Thanks very much, David. Thanks so much. Cheers. ACTU Secretary Sally McManus brought a whole range of ideas and proposals to this summit, some proving more popular than others, and she joined David Speers and I a little earlier.
Sally McManus, thanks so much for joining us. Now, you've come to this roundtable with a lot of ideas on tax, on artificial intelligence, on a training levy, a 4-day work week. Are any of the ideas gaining traction so far?
Well, a lot of those big ideas, we've not got to that part of the agenda yet. We're halfway through, so they're going to be discussed soon. We did discuss the training levy yesterday. I wouldn't say that it had a lot of fans amongst business. And the reason why we propose it really goes to the fact that we've got a productivity problem because the big businesses in our country, there's like so many monopolies effectively and duopolies. They're making really good profits. And instead of investing it on the things that make a difference for productivity, like capital, like better equipment, or about training, they've been taking it in like shareholder buyouts or dividends, right?
They're saying this would just be another tax, that this is going to hurt them to the tune of $4.5 billion a year.
Well, it wouldn't if they spend that money on training, and a lot of them, do, and a lot of them don't. And if you spend that money on training, you're not paying anything whatsoever. And so what do you do in a situation where businesses, like if you say, OK, we'll give you these incentives, because everyone, they all love incentives, do they actually work? Now, there's a lot of evidence that they actually don't, because they effectively, if you've got the underlying problem that they're prioritising profits rather than investing, they will claim those incentives for what they're doing anyway. So we've got to change things so that there is actually change in business behaviour in terms of their decisions around investing into new equipment or people or research and development. And so there have been some of the discussions. I have to say sometimes we feel a bit outnumbered on those matters.
In the room?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of business representatives there. There are supporters of what we say.
You're saying it's too heavily weighted into a pro-business voice around the table?
It's natural that people aren't going to come in there and say, put up corporate taxes, or, yes, we'll put more money into this, or we'll just agree to this. So I don't think
You're feeling a bit lonely around the table in suggesting some of those moves?
With some of them, yeah, to be honest. And I think it might be a bit lonely on AI, the Savo, but we'll see.
Well, can we actually ask you about AI? Because you have, of course, proposed a specific AI Act. Countries around the world are grappling with how to regulate AI. There hasn't been a lot of love federally for the notion of an AI Act, but I guess more broadly, how quickly does the government need to move on some form of regulation here? What is the risk if they just let it basically rip?
Yeah, so that's the Trump view of the world, and the tech billionaires, that's what they want. They want no regulation so they can do whatever they want. And there's one view of the world, let's call it the doomer view of the world, and that's that if you do that, AI will be used by authoritarian governments. It will increase inequality. It will mean more and more money to those people advocating those views. It will actually destroy good jobs. It might even destroy the jobs that are the creative, really good ones. We used to say it'd be great to have technology because it will give us more time to do creative things and think about things, philosophy and creative things. But instead, the technology might be doing the creative and good things, and we might be doing the cleaning.
But it's moving so fast, right? I mean, we can all see it in our lives and the things that we're doing and how AI is being used. Is there a risk that writing an act right now is the wrong time to do it, or would you argue it's the right time? What would it actually do?
I would say
what would it
this:
change?
the essential thing is trust, right? People have got to trust AI in order for it to deliver good outcomes. You also need people to use AI in order for it to deliver, to be implemented. And so you're going to get better outcomes if you involve people in the use of it, and also if you protect the very basics. If everyone thinks they're going to lose their job because of it, it's not going to be a good outcome, is it? So up front, deal with this up front, have those discussions up front, talk to workers about what it will mean in terms of reskilling them. That way you take away that fear from people, you're going to get a better implementation, and that's effectively what we want. We would love the better world. We actually want to be optimistic about it. We want to, dare we say, shorter working hours that we could work, and for AI to be used in ways that are going to benefit humanity. But we worry if you do the Trump, billionaire let rip thing, exactly the opposite will happen.
We know that the UK is looking at a different model. It's using existing regulators to effectively govern the use of AI within certain sectors. Like, we know that AI has potential to massively boost productivities. There are huge potential advantages here, but would you be satisfied with maybe a softer approach of using our existing regulators to govern AI?
It may boost productivity. It may also just boost profits, right? So we shouldn't just say, you know, automatically we're all going to be better off because of AI. We've got to make sure we're better off. And so that's our argument. That's why you need governments to, and we're not saying over-regulate it, we're just saying protect the basics and make sure that when this is implemented, it doesn't cause harm to people, and that we fairly share in any productivity gains that come out of it. And
so
we want better lives, not worse lives.
The Act would have to include that the productivity gains are shared with the workforce.
Well, that may not be in that Act, but it is something that needs to happen.
What would be in the Act?
Well, the type of things you want in the Act are things around protecting things like copyright, for example. We've got this huge problem at the moment with creatives, you know, journalists, everyone, where at the moment you can say, well, we've got copyright laws. You know, why aren't you using copyright laws, you know, this musician to take, you know, cases against, you know, these big tech corporations? Well, transparency, number one. We don't even know if they're doing it. Even though we sort of know they are, you might know that they're crawling your data and you don't know where that's ending up. So there's a clear power imbalance there. And so where there's power imbalance, it's the job of governments to make sure that you back in your actual citizens to make sure that we're not going to be run over the top of.
And on tax, you did put forward the ideas on negative gearing, capital gains tax, trusts. The Prime Minister has since said we're not going to be implementing anything on tax beyond what we took to the election. Does that concern you, or is this stuff that can wait until the next election?
I'll just say this. Whilst I said sometimes we feel lonely, actually the overall feeling in that room, and we're a little bit surprised about this, is I would say 90% agreement around the key things. And it's been very good because there's been a contest of ideas. And so it's good you've got us putting things that not everyone agrees with, because that leads to at least people hearing, you know, like the view of workers. The biggest thing that people agree on is the need to address intergenerational inequality. And this is said from all these different voices. And that I think that that's excellent, and a lot of that has to do with housing affordability. And so we've spent a lot of time today talking about one side of that, the supply side of that. You know, we're going to talk about tax tomorrow, which is another aspect of that. But if we're all coming, well, 90% of us are coming from a position that we want to see the next generation be better off, not worse off. It's a very good starting point. And so, I have to say, overall, very good, you know, goodwill in that room.
Which is a great outcome, really, for the summit so far. So if you're talking about the supply side and the fact that people are on the same page about the problems, what were some of the solutions that were put forward this morning to actually get more houses built? We understand possible freezes to the National Construction Code. What other ideas were thrown
The bigger focus was more on how do we, having a system which, the best words maybe are front load, like pre-approval, and this goes for both environment and for housing. Like, these are both national emergencies, let's say that. So how governments should be doing the work beforehand to say, like, let's say you've got a map of Sydney, all of these areas, yes, you can build, all these areas maybe you can't, and might be the same for the environment too. That's a simplification, but the principle is that if the work is done up front, people aren't going to bother trying to put in approvals for things that clearly they already know will be a no, or it could be a yes. That's going to speed it up. Other ways it can be sped up is to have timeframes. Ted O'Brien, I think, was in here saying that we would support that too, like making that.
Sally McManus, the ACTU Secretary, joining us a little earlier.